Hi, everybody, and welcome to Grow to Scale Your Business. Today, it's part two of our sales training and sales team building podcast with Greg. Welcome back, Greg.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us once again to show us what we're doing not perfectly and how we can do better when it comes to building our sales force and how we can leverage that sales force in order to grow our business and our revenue. I'm not talking about the bottom line because the bottom line is a different thing, but grow the revenue of the business. So today we have a lot of questions that we need to discuss, and I'll jump right into it without further ado. Greg, how do we build accountability into your program? Because without accountability, the chances of people are actually following through and keeping up with whatever they learned during their time being coached by you or any other sales coach are very slim.
Absolutely.
You lose your track. So there are 2 points to it. The first one is, how do the business owners hold you accountable?
Absolutely. So the accountability from the business owner to me does go back and forth, right? So it's what does that accountability look like to the program that I'm delivering for them? And then how are they holding themselves accountable to implementing that program for their teams, right? And so that's kind of the high level of where that accountability starts first. As far as with them to me, we set very clear expectations as far as what types of outcomes, what are we actually trying to accomplish with this relationship and this program, and how are we tracking and measuring to that success? So that lets me know and have that clarity between the two of us as far as are we on track to hit that or not? And if not, why? And that's where we can start to figure out, is it coming from me? Am I out of alignment with the goal and the direction that I'm going? Or is it a challenge within the organization that we need to continue to work on? And I think establishing that accountability does come down to a very high level of trust between the two of us, right? We have to be vulnerable enough to admit on both sides if there's something that maybe we missed. Because at the end of the day, like nobody's perfect, right? Like I'm not, nobody is. And sometimes those things do happen, but if we can catch those and hold ourselves and hold each other accountable to it, everybody wins at the end of the day. Um, to the other end of that, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So if I am helping a business owner implement a plan for their team, uh, how do I hold them accountable? Because I technically don't have any leverage, right? Like they don't work for me. Um, and this is where it can get a little bit creative. And this comes down to some honesty and transparency as well. And it's kind of setting a trap for what happens if you don't implement this, right? So we as a team have agreed that, for example, maybe you need to roll out a prospecting initiative for your sales team. And we've agreed this is what it's going to look like, and this is how you're going to hold them accountable. And now I know what I'm held accountable to is making sure that that was successful. But what is that business owner accountable to on the other side of that? Um, and how do we set a trap that is mutually agreed upon that if I don't follow through with this, this is why this is the negative outcome that's going to come from that. And this can be really fun and creative. It could be maybe you need to donate to a charity that you typically wouldn't donate to, right? Everybody gets to win at the end of the day, a lesson learned, and a charity gets some money.
You have to
Um,
support the other sports team that you hate.
that's a perfect one as well, right? Like
Yeah.
it seems so silly, but it really comes down to the thing that you focus on is the thing that gains the most traction, right? And if it's something that isn't important to us that we're not focused on, it's gonna fall through the cracks. And so creating that sense of accountability at the high level, that's how we make that happen.
You know what? Before we continue with the topic of accountability, I just realized as you were talking that we actually forgot to discuss what is the process that you are going with the business owner when you first enter the company. What
Hmm.
is your process of taking from discovery to actually working with the team? Like it's a gap we
Good
missed. I don't
question.
know how.
No, it's a great question. It's a great question. Um, and obviously, as you can imagine, the how we roll out a plan is going to be a little bit different because that needs to be customized to the company. But the way that we discover how we're going to build that plan is the same, and that goes back to the discovery conversation. And every company is going to have their own challenges, the thing that's top of mind that they want to fix. And so when I'm going through that conversation, it's a matter of identifying the symptoms that a lot of people are familiar with, right? My close rates aren't where I want them to be. We're not doing enough prospecting. Well, that's a symptom of a bigger problem. So what's the root cause of that? And a lot of times when people are coming to me, they think that it's a skill problem. People just need to close better. They need to be better doing cold calls. And that tends to be somewhat true, right? Everybody's skills can get a little bit better, even mine. But often when we start to peel the layers back on that, we start to see that there's a deeper level challenge of what does accountability look like in your organization? What does your sales process look like? Do your people actually know what the process is, or are they just kind of winging it? What does internal coaching and development look like? And that's where we really start to find a lot of the root causes. And so once we've identified that and we've agreed to partner and work together, that's usually where we start because we can do all the fun skills stuff like how do I do an effective cold call, but if the support behind that is broken, doesn't really you can be super effective and still get less than desirable results. So we need to start at the most baseline broken thing and build back from there. So when I'm working with a business owner, that is part of the conversation that we have very early on is where are we actually going to start here? And then from there, we can set those expectations of what accountability is going to look like. Good question, though.
Thank you. So as you are training them, now it's not only holding you accountable on executing that strategy to the best and most efficient level that will transform the business into a selling machine or that team into a selling machine, but now you also have to develop and implement an accountability program or accountability structure for the actual salespeople. And you
Yes.
were talking about the incentivization or the opposite of incentivization to
Yeah.
actually um, following through with your plan. But okay, you incentivize them to donate to the opposite of sports team if something happens or
Yep.
whatnot, if they don't stick to it or whatnot. But now you left, and somebody
Hmm.
has to keep them accountable and keep them on track.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So accountability, a lot of times when people think about this, it comes across as negative. It's consequence, right? They tend to be kind of synonymous when we start thinking about that, especially in the management, like mid-level management roles. And that's not what accountability is. It's not punishment. It's not this negative thing. It can lead to that. Don't get me wrong. But accountability is being able to stop a problem before it becomes a bigger problem, right? We're going to hold ourselves accountable to doing what we said that we're going to do so that we can actually have good measurement on the result and adapt as time is needed. So personally, I think that accountability starts with effective coaching because I can't hold somebody. Let's use the example of I've got a sales rep that's underperforming and I'm that sales rep's manager and I was told, "Hey, go hold them accountable." And maybe if I'm an ineffective manager, I'm going to go in and be, "Hey, what's going on with this? You know what's going to happen if this continues, right?" And we're already starting down that discipline track. But if I'm a good manager, I'm going to reflect inward and figure out am I contributing to this problem? Am I being ineffective in my coaching of this person first? So that's where accountability must start is with personal accountability from the leader following down. Uh, a structure to that, and it's like, okay, cool. I coached this person, but it was only when they came to me for coaching, right? Was I proactive about that? Did I have weekly individual meetings where not for a disciplinary purpose, but just look, last week, these were the goals that were set. Maybe you hit them, maybe you didn't, but we're going to meet about it anyway so that we have good clarity and good alignment on where we're going to go forward over the next week. And that's where those coaching conversations can start to come into play. Uh, with that also comes being very clear and transparent on what the metrics for accountability actually are. I was talking to a sales rep just the other day that is struggling to set appointments, cold calling, knocking them all out, but they're just not converting. And we've been working on the skill behind that. But he shared with me that he's incredibly stressed about losing his job because he's not setting appointments. It makes sense, right? If I was in that position, I would probably be having those same feelings. And when I talked to that rep's leader, that's not a concern of theirs, at least not yet. And so the sales rep thinks that he's being held accountable to a metric that he's actually not, at least not at this point in his journey. And so he's showing up with all the stress into his calls that's leading to not setting the appointments. And it's creating the snowball effect because there was a lack of clarity on how we're, what we're actually holding that rep accountable to, right? So clarity on metrics. And finally would be setting those clear expectations. So if it is, all right, well, let's use that same example. Let's say that this progresses down the line a little bit and he's still not improving. We understand now what metrics we're going to be measuring off of. We're talking about them often in our weekly meetings, and I'm coaching to those in between. Now, what does the expectation look like on the out, or if this doesn't change? I've seen a termination happen completely out of the blue. It was unexpected because none of this transparency was there, and it completely caught that individual off guard. Um, Ideally, if accountability unfortunately gets to that point where it's time to end that relationship, it should be abundantly clear to both parties that that's where that's going. If there's any lack of clarity there, the problem is with the delivery of that conversation, the leadership that happened before that. So when I'm building out accountability plans and we're having that transparency with the leaders, these are the pieces that we take into account, not just how are you going to have a tough conversation with your people, but what does the entire structure around accountability look like? Are we measuring people in the term of weeks or months? How are we going to be tracking improved success versus still missing goal? And all of that needs to be taken into account when we start thinking about what an accountability process needs to look like for an organization. And it can be easily overlooked because we don't like to think about it until sometimes it's too late.
So in this example, where he was afraid to lose the job and the company wasn't even thinking in that direction, what was the actual thing the business or the company was looking at that he was not aware of?
They were looking for activity. That was how his success at that stage, because it was
Taking
very early
action.
on. Yes. So in which he
Okay.
was meeting, right? So he was doing all of the behavior and they understood, hey, this is a challenge where you've got coaching, you've got training to work on setting those appointments. And eventually, yes, that is going to be a metric. Uh, but that piece, that level of clarity was missing. And so when we start looking at the coaching to how do I set these appointments, he had all of the skills, but because he was going into those conversations with this voice in the back of his head of I have to set this, otherwise it could be my job, he was sabotaging that conversation, right? Nobody wants to see the desperate salesperson show up into the conversation. We can sense that, right? They get commission breath. Uh, and and by removing that stress of just like, look, yes, accountability could be a thing in the future if we don't change this, but don't focus on that right now. That's not what you're being held accountable to yet. And when you are, we'll have that conversation. And so
Hmm.
that allows him to be able to dial back and actually show up the right way without that stress and that frustration.
Which is also great on the company side because both you and I know that cold calling is all about the volume and the numbers. And one of the biggest challenges for the salespeople when they're doing cold calling is actually doing the calls
Yes.
because the cold calling is such a ungrateful or unrewarding
Yep.
job where you're calling, and either people are not answering or they're hanging up the phone on you or they're rude to you or whatnot, that it disappoints you, so you stop doing the work. And I have hired cold callers for my business for some of the things that I do. And one of the things that I told them right out of the bat, like at the presentation of hiring them, the onboarding presentation, that you have to have X amount of calls in order to
Hmm.
get X amount of yeses just for the appointment, not even the sale.
Yes.
And what I found is that if I said you have to have 100 calls within this amount of time, and for the entire week they made only 10 calls. And I
Yeah.
was like, you're not, it's not that you're failing, you didn't even try. Because if
Yes.
you're making 10 calls a week, what were you doing for the entire week? You were given the leads. It's not
Yeah.
like you had to hunt for the leads. So I love the fact that that company measured the quantity in order to de-incentivize, what is the word? I don't know how to pronounce that word, but remove the edge or the
Yeah.
stress from actually making the call
Yes. Yeah.
and
And
practice
that's how
the
you
pitch.
scale up, right? Like let's just start with just do the activity. I don't care if it works. I don't care how like successful it is, quote unquote, just do the activity. We can work on the other. But if you can't even just do the activity, like there's where are
Yeah,
we gonna go, right?
yeah. Because we can work on improving your skills, but we
Hmm.
can't improve or force you into picking up the phone. So as long
Correct.
as you're willing to pick up the phone, you're already hitting the mark, and then the skills where that's where you come in and you help them
Absolutely.
polish that. Okay, next question. How do you keep momentum as you roll out new strategies or initiatives to large sales teams? Because right now we're talking about tiny sales teams,
Hmm.
but now let's talk about the larger workforce where you have maybe 20 salespeople and
Yeah.
they need something more robust.
The cool thing about that is it's not much different. There might be some additional layers, but the overall approach is going to be very, very similar. So we can kind of talk about the rough structure of what a successful rollout looks like with the nuance of this is what some adaptation that you might need to make on a larger scale. And the the big key here, and it's in your question, is how do we not just how do we roll this out, but how do we do it without losing the momentum? And I think a lot of times when we're looking at rolling out a new initiative, it's more a focus of how do we get this embedded, and they tend to ignore that, hey, we're gonna take this slip if we don't manage that actual implementation rollout process, right? So I think that question is really important. Um, this kind of ties back into our last conversation, where how do we define success? Because we need to know if one thing starts to slip or if the other isn't taking off. So we've got things going in different directions here. Um, Being able to pay attention to the very, very small details and the small wins is what is going to help get buy-in from that team on the new initiative. Because it was probably rolled out with, hey guys, we're going to do this brand new thing that is slightly different than what we did before, and we are expecting these grandiose results. And fast forward a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, and those results aren't there, you're going to start to lose the buy-in of that team, and you're going to lose momentum not only on the new rollout, but now you're losing it on the old one because now they're stuck in this limbo in between. And so I think a big piece of that success is looking at and recognizing the small wins, the small changes that the team is making as that rollout is taking place. Um, the Another piece of that is being able to catch those challenges early, which goes back to the leadership and the accountability and the coaching and those weekly meetings. So we understand anytime that change is going to happen, there's going to be some level of friction there, right? As human beings, we're just not change prone. So if we as leaders are only focused on having conversations about the new way of doing things and neglect the conversations for maintaining what we were already doing, that's where we're going to see that momentum drop off. And yes, you may end up coming out ahead, but you're going to see this like typical increase, a dip, and then it will take back off, as opposed to how do we get that into more of a bell curve. Um, I've seen challenges with the goal not being clear. And if you put yourself, say, into the individual salesperson's shoes, and this on a larger scale is a much more likely to happen because there's typically multiple levels or multiple layers. So a plan maybe is rolling down from the CEO, but maybe we've got one or two middle managers, and now here I am, the salesperson lowest on that chain. And the goal may have been communicated partway down, but it's kind of like playing the telephone game. How is it getting watered down as we get all the way to the end? And so now I'm the salesperson. I've been successful doing it the old way. And you now tell me, hey, I need to do it this new way. And maybe I'm being held accountable to it. Maybe I'm being coached to it. But like, what's in it for me? And if there's a misalignment within some piece of that chain, you're going to start to see that sliding as well. So I guess the how with that is making sure, especially the higher up that you are on the chain, you should be able to grab any salesperson at random and ask them what the goal of the new initiative is. And if you find that they're not able to communicate that vision back to you, there's a gap somewhere there in the middle. So go address that gap. Make sure that everybody's on the same page. Um, Especially during a rollout, there is a lot of change. Especially the larger the organization, there's a lot of moving pieces. Some people are getting on board, some people aren't, and it's really easy for us to get lost in that moment, especially as leaders. And at the end of the day, though, there is still that goal. Hopefully, we understand it. So, are we fixing the problems in the moment without losing track of where we're driving to? So, are we getting so lost in the day-to-day mundane, and making sure that people are on board and having our accountability and discussions that we lose sight of where we're actually going, and we're going to really start to grind the brakes on that because we're creating friction and roadblocks for ourselves because we forgot where we were going. We forgot to drive there, and instead we're just kind of doing donuts in the day to day. I think the last big thing, um, and especially in the larger organizations, is going to be uh, the leader anticipating what's coming. So we've talked about kind of how do we fix these problems when they pop up, but the best medicine is preventative medicine. So to not lose momentum from a strategic standpoint, what is that leader anticipating? They know their team better than anybody, or they should, hopefully. So, what are they anticipating? What happened the last time that they made a major change? What caused that friction? What caused that loss of momentum? And how can they address that this time as opposed to waiting for it to happen and then trying to put band-aids on problems as they pop up? Those would be my recommendations.
That's great. I was listening to you and a question popped up
Hmm.
where you're developing the strategy for the team and you're developing the strategy for the company. Where or do you incorporate in that strategy also a component of trainings? And I'm talking about big organizations where it's not
Hmm.
just the company owner or the CEO and then the sales team. They might have
Yeah.
hierarchy of a VP of sales or a team leader of sales, and then you have the salespeople. So,
Yeah.
how do you incorporate, or where do you incorporate training and handholding of that extra layer between the sales team and the top management of the company? And how much guidance and tools do you give them before you
Hmm.
start working with the team? Because if the leader fails and the leader doesn't handhold the team properly to support what you're doing, then the team will
Yes,
fail no matter how much effort you will put in into that.
you're absolutely right. Uh, the speed of that is going to be based off of the speed of the weakest link, right? So some people maybe they didn't have a ton that needed to be worked on, or they're very quick learners. Maybe they're able to turn that around in a couple of weeks. Other people, maybe it takes them 6 months. Uh, but with that, I take the approach of mom and dad don't fight in front of the kids. So if we look at the me being a parental figure there as well, right? So me, the CEO, the VP of sales, the sales manager, we all need to be on the same page before we do any kind of a rollout to the sales team because it's unfair to them. And if we don't know where we're going, how are we supposed to guide anybody there? So those conversations, to your point, they can be really, really quick, or they might drag out for a little while. Uh, but we don't do anything for the sales team until everybody above them is very, very clear on exactly what is going to happen and how we're going to measure that success. Uh, you had another piece of that question, and that was what how do we guide or coach or train the middle management? Um, that kind of ties back to what I was saying before. If everybody's not on the same, so let's say we get everybody on the same page. As an example, we understand exactly what our goals are, we understand what our process is, and we identify that this manager, hopefully they're the right person, but they need a little bit of work. Depending on how severe that work is, we may stop there and just we're going to work with the manager until we get you up to par to be able to actually lead this team. And in the meantime, maybe I assume a piece of that role and we manage the team together as a pair, so that that manager can learn from me, right? That could be a potential scenario. It could be that me and that manager just work together until they are up to par. Uh, Either way, there must be a strong leader. Maybe the manager is the wrong person. We need to let that manager go and hire somebody different. Uh, in that scenario, you can't just neglect the sales team until a new manager comes in. So who's the next person in line? Right now, maybe instead of the sales manager, now I'm working with the VP of sales and the sales team. So sales team's getting skills training and understanding their sales DNA and all that kind of stuff. And I'm working with the sales VP on how are you holding the team accountable? Right? What do those coaching conversations look like? At the end of the day, the next leader has to step up and fulfill that role because you can't just leave the team high and dry.
That's awesome. Now, story time.
Yeah,
Tell us about a client who was on the brink of collapse, which happens to a lot of businesses, especially this time of 2020, from 2020 to 2010, like
yeah,
sorry, 2020 to 2030. The 10 years were not easy on us.
yeah.
So on brink of collapse, and how you flipped the script and made them get out of their own way and start doing a great job on sales.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell a story. It's not a made up story. Real events, names and people have been changed. Um
Should
to
we put
because maybe
that
maybe
text
that
at the
person
bottom?
maybe oh no, I got it. Maybe that person's going to watch this, hopefully, because they are on my LinkedIn. And I don't want to call anybody out, but it is a really good story and it's an empowering story, right? So um for the sake of this, we're going to call our
Bob,
leader Jane. And
Jane.
Jane, when she came to me, she had a plumbing company, and it had been successful in the past. Um, Due to events, kind of like you were mentioning, times get tough, things get a little bit hard. When I met Jane, she was all alone, right, doing everything herself, running running the in-home actual repair side of things, as well as handling assessments and sales calls and everything else like that, right? So very much at her wit's end. Um, and as her and I talked, I was kind of curious as to like why are we here, and get a little bit of that backstory. And she had been a plumber by trade and was the classic entrepreneur of I've got this skill. I think that I can monetize this on my own and build a business around it. Fantastic. She went out on her own, and she had never had sales training. She'd never been a salesperson. But she managed to hit the market at the right time, had the right proposition, and ended up building a rather successful company. She had a couple of salespeople that worked for her, and due to economic situations and a bunch of other things, the that team ended up basically folding, and takes it to where her and I were at when we met. So as we were kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, what is causing the friction now? Like, you built this once, why can't you do it again? And going back to what I was mentioning earlier, understanding what's a layer deeper, and what's a layer deeper than that. So we start to realize that there wasn't, that she wasn't running a process, and was basically just kind of showing up and hoping for the best, right? Like, I do good work, people are going to see that, people are going to buy from me. And when I started to ask her, what made the old team successful, uh, she didn't know. And it was because when she had hired those folks previously, they were good at being salespeople. And she didn't really take the time to figure out what kind of process they were using. She didn't really document anything down. Um, and when it came down to just her, all of that skill, all that talent just basically evaporated from her organization. And she was kind of left holding the bag. So what her and I worked together on, and her goal was, I want to hire more salespeople. That will fix my problem. That's what I did the last time. I just need to get enough money to hire another salesperson. Uh, and I advised her against that. Um, she wasn't super thrilled with that answer. But I told her, you know, basically you're going to run into the same problem again. Hopefully you don't. But if something happens, you're going to be right back where you're at unless we do this the right way, the way that it should have been done the first time, which would have avoided you being where you're at now. So we drove it all the way down to what is the end strategy for this business? What are your goals? How are you tracking to success? Where do you need to be and in what time frames? And then together, her and I built out exactly what a sales process, a sales plan, an onboarding plan for new people, exactly what that was going to look like. So that when she was ready to hire that next salesperson and had the funding to be able to do that, everything was done and that individual was set up for success, which would allow Jane to be able to step back. So I basically trained Jane how to be a good salesperson and a sales leader and a business owner before I said, "Hey, it's probably time to go find a salesperson." And that's where she is right now, looking for that sales team. The business has gotten out of the red into the black and now slightly into the green, with enough profit on top to be able to say, "Hey, I can support the salary and the benefits and everything like that to bring another member on." Um, Sky's the limit for where we can go from here. Uh, but that one was a really close call.
It's a um very subtle, not difference, but when you're trying or you're thinking about growing your business and you're thinking about hiring people, if you don't know how to train them and you don't know what expectations to set with them and what to communicate to them, you don't have SOPs, which is standard operating procedures,
Hmm.
or processes or systems in order to empower them to do their job well. If you hire them, to your point, the way you articulated very eloquently and very well, you're going to fail because you don't provide them the right tools to succeed, and you
Hmm.
expect from them to figure it out themselves. Now the chances of you like this like Jane The chances of her being lucky twice in her life of finding salespeople that actually know what they're doing, and doing it without her guidance are very, very low, because
Yes.
there are a lot of professionals out there, but not many of them are very good at their job. They're just saying they are.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect example of when I was helping a company to expand into US, and I started talking about, tell me which systems you're using for sales pipeline, and we're going to touch technology in a second. But I was talking to them about, what do you use for your sale, for the pipeline management, and just show me reports. I want to know which industries you sold to, who are the customers, how much money you made from them, which products you sold, who sold it, um,
Yeah.
what did you upsell, what did you cross sell, because I wanted those reports in order to create a strategy for marketing, as because if I know which industries you're selling to, I know who to market to with use cases and examples from your previous success. They
Yeah.
could not export that data, and the reason they couldn't export that data, and they had 50 employees, it's not like it was a one man shop.
Yeah.
They had a VP of sales, they had a team of sales, but they couldn't export the data because the tools they were using were not meant to manage sales pipelines. It was not a CRM, even though the software has a CRM module and it has a
Mm,
sales module, but the tool was not officially created for that purpose. The tool was created for project management, which for that purpose is doing a phenomenal job.
yeah.
So when we were expanding into US, I said, well, in your small country, that is enough. Like you can figure it out without doing complex analysis. But now you're entering 50 states, and now we're
Yeah.
building four sales channels with a bunch of salespeople and partners and resellers. If you don't have the right tools with the right reporting to track and analyze and help you make data driven decisions where your investment is working and where it's not, you're bound to fail. And the problem for even the existing sales team was that because they can't export the data into visual report that will help them understand where they're succeeding, where they're failing,
Hmm.
when they wanted to grow, even in their local market, they had to guess, either playing guessing game or like
Yeah.
doing this. I think I I was successful there.
Hopes
So
and
no
dreams.
SOPs, no processes, actual processes, and
Yeah.
no systems to take it, give it to the next salesperson that comes in new, and tell them this is the training material.
Yes. Yeah. And
So
there's a big difference between orientation and onboarding, right?
yeah,
Orientation is here's your desk, there's the bathroom, there's the water fountain. Onboarding is setting that new hire, regardless of whether it's a sales role or an accountant, setting them up for success and all the tools and resources that they need, making sure that they're prepped for, hey, these are the challenges that you're going to expect. This is how we're measuring success, all that stuff. And when that's not in place, one of two things is going to happen. This is regardless of the type of role. You are either going to get somebody that is underqualified, and you've got to now teach them how to do all of these things. Or you are going to get somebody that's qualified and is going to sniff out really quickly that
that you are
you
not
don't have your
qualified.
stuff together. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, ooh, you don't have anything that I need to be successful.
Yeah.
So now you found the right person, and they're gone because they know that they can do better. They know that companies are out there providing those resources. So, and then you end up right back in the same place with the bottom of the barrel candidates because you don't have a good system in place to bring in the right people. So yeah, my suggestion is do the hard work up front. It might suck. You might have to wear a couple of hats for longer than you want to. You might have to do some roles that you don't really want to, but it will pay dividends in the long run because you'll get the right people the first time.
one of the things that I drill down to every single business owner when they're trying to grow, and then when they're done with the growth scaling, is the standard operating procedures and the documentation of their processes and the SOPs. And
Mhm.
one of the reasons I'm drilling it down from experience is that when you hire new people, you give them sorry, you give them that folder, whether it's videos or actual documentation, physical one, and you give them to first read it and train on it. And when somebody comes in and asks a question that is in the documents, instead of answering the question verbally, I would refer them back to the documents, because if they're still asking a question, there are two reasons. Either they didn't read it, well, three reasons. Either they didn't read it, they forgot they read it, or the documents are not good enough. And
Mhm.
if the document, and I want to identify what is which one of these three is the right answer to the question, why are they still asking that question? Because if they didn't read it, they failed at the onboarding process. If they
Yep.
forgot it, it's okay, because when you're doing an onboard process and you have a lot of documents to read or a lot of stuff to consume, it's okay, you forget stuff, but that's why you have documented processes and systems and standard operating procedures, so you can go back and review them. Not a problem.
Yeah.
If the reason that the documents are flawed and I don't have the answer to that question, or the answer is not well articulated, and that's why you either don't understand it, that it's my problem and I have to go and fix it. So the next time I onboard the next employee, I don't have the problem. And the goal is that once those documents are perfected, you become hands off as the
Mhm.
leader or as the manager. You go in and you just hire somebody. Here, go train yourself. Ask me if you have any questions. They are not in the documents. If you have questions about the documents, ask me. I'll give you examples from that will help you understand the documents. But now you switch from spending a month in training a person every single time,
Mhm.
especially if you have high turnover, which is a different topic that might
Yeah.
be episode number 3. But instead of spending a month on every person, now you maybe spend an hour a week just tweaking and adjusting whatever they learn from your documents or videos or whatnot, and helping them support their growth in the organization. So please, when you start working with Greg or you start thinking about growing and scaling, begin with the basics. If you're the only person who does everything, document everything you do. So it helps the people you hire to do their job faster and better than and avoid that growing pains that you experience when you're figuring it out. Okay, that's
Very
my
well said.
5 cents.
Nope, very well said. I will second everything there.
You were doing this, so I was like, okay, yeah, you
Yep.
understand. Okay, last topic, which is something I touched and I said we're going to talk about it in further details. Tech. Let's talk about what are the coaching trends or tools that business owners and sales leaders should be aware of, should
Mhm.
implement in their business, and some of them are non-negotiable if you want to
Yeah.
succeed.
Yeah.
So
Um,
let's start with the basics.
yes. And this isn't going to be groundbreaking to anybody, but it needs to be said, and unfortunately more often than I would like to think. But a CRM and an actual sales driven CRM. Um, I have seen everything from my CRM is a stack of business cards to it's an Excel sheet to its handwritten notes. And these are with organizations doing pushing 7 figures. And it was absolutely astounding to me that, I mean, congratulations, you were able to make it this far off of handwritten notes. Well done. But then we go into what's your sales team as you're starting to bring people in, what are they going to do? Can everybody duplicate this very unique way that you had here? What's the backstory on this prospect? What's the deal on that one? Where and it's just everywhere. Um, having I learned very early on in my career that the CRM can genuinely make or break your success for managing your pipeline. Um, yeah, it was I was trying to do things an old school way. I was one of those trying to do the handwritten notes in my own system, and I had Salesforce available to me at the time. Take it or leave it. Salesforce isn't a bad CRM, and I could not believe the power that I was leaving on the table by not utilizing that tool that was provided to me. I learned from that lesson, and I've never looked back. So I heavily advocate a a intentional and sales pipeline tracking CRM, which is not the same as I have a list of all the people that do business with me, or I have this list in something that might be classified as a CRM. But it needs to be data that can easily be manipulated. You can run reporting off of it. You can run the analytics. You can do a deep dive into the information that's there, not just names on a screen, right? Um, Beyond that, as we kind of look at what's new and breaking, AI shouldn't throw anybody off. Of course, AI. Uh, there's a couple of ways that I've seen AI be leveraged successfully in kind of some ways that directions that I see it going based off of tests that I've seen in the market. Um, Using AI to handle notes is massively efficient. I mean, there's tons of them out there. Hop onto any Zoom call in the last 2.5 years, and you'll see a bunch of note takers that try to join with you, whether that's Fireflies or Fathom or even Zoom has its own embedded AI stuff now, right? Um, it's like cool. It did a transcript, great. But the next level of that is being able to, for example, you do a sales call, you can give that note taker the parameters of what a good sales call should look like and have it review your sales call for you. So if I'm a sales manager, instead of having to listen to 8 hours of audio for my team and be able to take everything down, I can pull up 8 recordings and have that AI condense the key information for me from did this meet our sales process or not? And then I can inspect it from there with the snippets. And so that allows me to be super efficient for my time so that I can make more touch points on my team and allows me to laser target where the team needs help that's more objective than subjective. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, maybe I missed something. AI is catching everything there. So that's one really big piece where I see AI helping us grow as sales professionals and leaders. Uh, Another is kind of in the same vein, but being able to have a conversation or a mock conversation with AI. There's some tools out there now that do this. The super basic way is ChatGPT. Even you can talk to now, right? Depending on your subscription level, it tells you how much you can talk to it. Uh, but giving that AI maybe a challenging scenario that you've been running into in your sales calls. Hey, I'm really having trouble with this objection. Give it to me, and I'm going to practice. And leveraging that for your role play and your practice. That way, you're not practicing on live clients. Uh, Taking that a step further, that can be recorded, that can be sent to your manager. He can run that through his AI tools. And now all of a sudden, we have a very targeted coaching conversation that we can have as opposed to spending a bunch of time with the doing side of things. Um, Along sales, and this is going to be predominantly around outbound sales, uh, there are some really good chat agents that are starting to pop up in the market. Uh, One that I saw here recently was a sales call, and I heard the recording, and this call happened about 1:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time. and it happened 30 seconds after the client had submitted their contact me form. So they're awake because they just clicked a button, so they got a phone call just about 1:30 in the morning. And it was about 3 minutes into this call that the guy realized he wasn't talking to a real person. It was really phenomenal. Uh, there's no fear of rejection. There is no skipping of steps if AI is having your sales conversation. Just imagine the perfect salesperson that doesn't need to sleep, and they're doing your outbound lead follow-up calls for you. It's awesome. So you go, okay, well, as a salesperson, then you just made me irrelevant. Not necessarily. Um, could low-level, highly transactional sales maybe turn into AI only? It wouldn't be a stretch of the imagination for that to happen. But where I see this really helping is as an organization, I don't necessarily need to have a team of just cold callers, right? I can make my cold callers actually really good salespeople through training and development, because that's where most cold callers want to get to. And now I've got my core group of really good salespeople, and they can spend all of their time having sales conversations instead of prospecting conversations. So if I was to make a prediction of where I see AI really impacting the sales field over the next 5 years is from a prospecting perspective. They're going to be your appointment setters. Think an SDR role. I could very much see that becoming very heavy with AI.
I'm smiling when you're saying it because one of the things that we build is those AI receptionist that will pick up all the phone calls, have a full-blown conversation with the you didn't know
Yeah,
that because I didn't tell you that. So
no, I didn't.
you were talking about it, and I was like, well, that's what we do. One of the things that we integrate into a business in order to automate and systemize it, in order to remove the people, the team, and the owner as the bottleneck of the business. So if I integrate an AI receptionist for you that will pick up all the incoming call, have a full-blown conversation with the customer, and book appointments into your calendar, now your sales team is there to close, not to
Yep.
have the tire kickers answering the frequently asked questions where they're not serious about the purchase. They just want to know, just curious. And by asking the curious or frequently asked questions, they take up the time of your sales team to actually doing the high value closing conversations with real customers that are ready to buy on that customer journey. So we integrate that. As you said, the outbound calls, when somebody comes through the chat, we integrate the chat, and then we have a whole workflow that we can create based on the needs of the company in order to do the outbound call when it's needed. So I love that you said that because that's like the future of the business. And I have a lot of
I would agree.
conversations with business owners. They say, well, it's going to replace us. AI is going to make me redundant or make me useless to the organization. And I say no. And I say no. AI cannot change, replace your personality. Yes, I assign personality to the AI, and my AI, when it creates content for me or when it creates my sequences for emails, follow-ups with customers, and so on, which I'll touch in a second on this topic. My personality that I assign is Joan Rivers. Sassy, funny, hilarious, punchy, because that's my personality. Like, I'm no BS kind of coach. You won't hear me fluff up. And you hear the way I speak. I don't mince my words because it's a waste of your time as the person who's listening to me. You pay me by the hour, right? So I don't want to waste
Yep.
your money. But it's also, I was burned. I was burned by when I was working in organizations and I would sit in a boardroom when there are like 20, sometimes even 40 people sitting in two, three circles on chairs because there's not enough chairs in the around the table or room around the table. And the person who is speaking or facilitating that meeting is using such complex terminology, such
Mhm.
complex verbiage, dancing around a topic that I would sit there and under my nose, I would say, please get to the point. Like, what? Please just get to the point of what you're trying to say, because my attention span is very short. That's
Uh-huh.
why I speak fast and I work really, really well with people who speak fast, because my brain is like this.
Just
And
going.
when
Yeah.
I watch videos, I watch them on 1.5 or
Oh,
1.75 because
I have to do the same thing.
like I can't. It's too slow for me. So I don't like live webinars or anyway. So my point is about AI is not going to replace you. It's just going to remove the bottlenecks from the business and
Hmm.
empower you to make or do higher value tasks that do require human touch, do require human personability when it comes to talking to a customer and to the close.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're spot on. It's the higher value task, right? Do I see multi-million dollar contracts being closed by AI? Not unless
probably
it's
not.
AI to AI, right? So like people, that is where the human touch is going to be craved for the very foreseeable future. So how can I have more of those conversations? Well, I can outsource to AI. It doesn't sleep, doesn't need to take a break, and it does the exact perfect right thing every time as long as I trained it that way.
And another thing, when you were talking about the sales tools and the sales pipelines and the importance of having a good system to manage and run it, is not only that you have the system to track those sales and where they're on that journey from coming in as a lead, either cold or warm lead, up to actual close sale, but also what happens in between and how do you follow up with those
Hmm.
leads to keep them warm and keep them interested and keep them engaged. So one of the things that AI is leveraging, or not leveraging, but really good with, is as we build out those sales pipelines and sales and CRMs that support the sales process for the company, we also integrate the AI, and the AI follows up with a new incoming lead, whether by text message or phone call or email, and keeps that conversation going, not the deep dive salesy conversation. I want to leave it for the salespeople, for the people, for the humans. But
Yeah.
with the hey, I want to follow up on our meeting from yesterday. These were the action items as were captured by the AI transcriber, right? So
Yep.
human didn't have to sit down and write those action items from the meeting. I just want to summarize our conversation from yesterday. Here it is. How do you feel about it, or what are you taking out of these action items, and when is the next time we're going to meet? So whatever the sequence that we create together that will generate the highest value or highest conversion rate
Hmm.
of the customer, not only saying, oh, that was a nice chat, okay, next, like next professional or next
Yep.
company, but actually say that was a nice conversation. Oh, they give me value. Now I don't remember what was the full hour, but now they gave me the action items, so I have the highlights of that
Yep.
conversation, and now I have the next steps to actually the AI will tell me, okay, let's schedule another appointment, or
Yes.
let's
Yeah.
text me send me an SMS. What would you like to do next? When the customer sends you a next SMS, do you want to answer it or the AI should answer it? Because as you train the AI, it can continue the conversation
Hmm.
over the text messages without your involvement. You are
Yeah.
there just to close.
Yeah.
Even the contracts can
It's
be
an
generated.
exciting future to think about. Everybody, I don't say everybody, a lot of people in my personal circle, um, and I understand the concerns. Like AI is going to be, it's going to replace me, or it's gonna take a lot of these things. And it's like I think AI is going to make us all better
Yeah.
because we have to. It's like okay, cool. Well, if it's going to take this more low priority skill set, and that gives me an opportunity to focus on how do I hone my high priority skill sets. And I see that as a positive, a net positive in this space. I make no assumptions about AI at large.
Yeah. But even for the sales, well, what is a frustrating thing for a salesperson? Okay, I sold them. Now I have to write the contract. I need to fill out
Hmm.
all the forms and,
All the
and
admin
so on.
stuff.
So if
Yep.
think about a workflow as an example, okay? So you're an event planning company. And as an event planning company, you have to have a Zoom call with the customer in order to draw all the requirements and whatnot to understand the
Yeah.
needs for the event. Then you need to summarize it in order to understand the who are the vendors and what needs to be done. Then you need to create a contract. Then you need to send the contract to the customer for signage and so on. So, what if I took that and I automated it? You have the Zoom conversation, and that's where your involvement ends. It automatically transcribes the conversation with the action items.
Hmm.
The contract is edited by AI and created automatically. The contract is being sent to the customer automatically, no involvement. Worst case scenario, you review the contract just for
Yeah.
accuracy and tweak, which usually that's what happens. Somebody writes the contract, somebody reviews and approves it, and then it goes to the next step. So be the approver, not the writer.
Yeah.
Go review and approve. Click on approved, send automatically to the next step, which is probably vendor acquisitions and
Hmm.
whatnot. Even the vendor follow-up and communication is also done with the AI.
Yeah.
Contract signing of the customer, follow up with the customer. Hey, I saw that you didn't sign the contract yet. Do you have any questions? Hey, it's time to pay the invoice, pay the deposit, and then follow up. Hey, it's time to pay the invoice. And if they didn't pay, the AI will continue following up with them until they do.
Yeah.
That is time consuming for a human.
Oh, very.
You need like 3 people to do it. Now take those 3 people and just free their time to do the actual sales. Now you have
Yeah.
3 times the business.
Yep. Just scale faster. Doesn't
Scale
replace
faster.
anybody. Just scale faster.
So I love that you touched it. It wasn't planned. By the way, it was not planned.
Oh yeah, no. No, it makes your comment before we started the recording about AI transcription make a little bit more sense. But yeah, no, I had no idea. That's ironic.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up because I loved this episode. It was a lot of actionable stuff that we were talking about, some great examples. What would you recommend the audience that is listening to us? What would you recommend to think about or to consider or look at inwards into their business right now that will make them say, okay, I need to take the next step. I need to improve on my sales. I need to either reach out to Greg or I need to start thinking about integrating the tech into my business before I reach Greg because I don't have the right tools to capture, nurture, and follow up with the customers that Greg will help me generate, right? Because a lot of times people jump into marketing and sales before they have the solid foundation to support that influx in leads and customers.
Yeah. Um, so we can look at this from a couple of different business sizes, right?
Yes.
Looking at the solopreneur that's saying, okay, is it time for me to start hiring a salesperson? Am I missing tools? What tools am I missing? What gaps am I not seeing or blind spots do I have? Uh, my personal recommendation doesn't need to be me. It doesn't necessarily even need to be a person, but have something put a touch point on your business. Have a quick consultation conversation to enlighten you as to, hey, this is what's missing. There's tons of resources on Reddit where you can have a conversation with all kinds of different people, right? Take that with a mild grain of salt. Um, but there's more than enough resources out there that you don't have to do it alone. So if you find yourself thinking, What about XYZ? Just ask somebody. Most of that information is relatively easy to come by. But don't do it alone, because that's how, always put a second set of eyes on something. That's how things get broken. For the businesses, maybe the next step up, saying, all right, so I've got a sales team. We are wanting to scale. That's where I would look internal at your processes, your leadership, and your accountability. More times than not, that's where I find the most significant bottlenecks or friction points. Unless you just hired some terrible salespeople, you usually have the talent in your sales team. It might need to be sharpened. It might need to be honed. Maybe there's one bad apple in there. But most of the time, a lot of that friction is coming from a lack of accountability, a lack of good structured coaching, maybe even a lack of coaching skills. Uh, Look internal and identify, hey, did I, all these things that Greg talked about today, do we have those things in place? Are they working? Great. Cool. Now it's time to start looking at that next step and go focus on the sales team. If they're not there, build them. And for the larger organizations that have figured out that step, it's like, all right, so now we know how to build. How do we scale? How do we implement a new strategy into our sales team? It's paying attention to those momentum suckers, the friction points that can cause you to slip. And a lot of that, especially if you've developed your leaders up to that point, is making sure that they are not losing sight of the goal and that we're not getting lost in the weeds of change. And sticking to a couple of the key points today, making sure that we're not ignoring the past while focusing too much on the future, or vice versa. Those would be the primary action items or areas of focus that I would pay attention to. I think it covers all of them.
That's great. Thank you so much, Greg. You can reach Greg at the contact information in the comments below, or somewhere where I'm going to put it, wherever you see this
Up
content.
there, down there. Yep.
There. So you'll just look for it and you will see the contact details for Greg. Fantastic resource, no matter what size of business you are. And you'll maybe we'll do part 3. Maybe. I don't know. Like, there is an
You might be able
opportunity.
to
We'll
talk me
see.
into it.
We'll see. We'll talk about it. If you liked it, like the video, subscribe, and let us know if you want to see more content from Greg. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
And I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.